the link with pre and postnatal depression with hyperemesis is huge, and of course it is. Of course it is. And I thought naively, well, when I get to the end of this pregnancy, like, I'll be fixed. The depression, or, well, you know, I wasn't diagnosed with depression, but this cloud that's following me, it'll go. But the residual trauma that I'm carrying, and I was so scared to use the word trauma. I felt like such a loser. I was like, I can't claim trauma. This isn't trauma. Trauma's, you know, emergency cesarean in the middle of the night. Trauma's nearly bleeding out. Trauma's not this isn't my word to claim. I can't claim trauma. But I have to. I've been traumatized by it. It sounds so dramatic, but I don't. It still follows me now.
I'd just do anything not to feel like this.
Content creator and podcaster Clarkson is one of the thousands of women who are diagnosed with hyperemesis gravidarum in the UK every year, an extreme form of pregnancy sickness characterised by persistent nausea and vomiting, which can last the whole 9 months.
How would you describe the toll that HG took on you?
I think a lot of people say it's like the worst hangover you've ever had every single day. And I get that. But it feels more chronic, less fun, less regretful. You can't explain it until, I'd say a hangover is probably as close a description as I could get anybody else who hasn't had it to understand it. But a hangover's one bad day too, if you're really unlucky. And that's not the day-to-day is brutality is not that. That's not the hard part of HG, the every single day. It's the fact that it's all the days with no let-up. The thing with HG that's so brutal is the mental toll. There's no light. It's like you're trying to do it all in the dark. You're trying to do it all in the rain. That's what it feels like. It feels like you're just ill in the rain, like ill in the cold. And you can't snuggle. There's no respite. Not even for an hour. There's just no respite. So physically it's brutal, but mentally, I'd take the physicality of it every day over the mental side of it.
How bad did it get when it was weighing really heavy on you?
There are two bads, and I don't know which is worse. At the beginning of the pregnancy, I was so ill I couldn't get out of bed. And there's an element of surrender to that, when you're so ill that you're in bed or you're in hospital and you're surviving. And mentally you can kind of, you get on with it because you have to get on with it. Having said that, that was some of the darkest days of my life, because my daughter was 14 months when I got pregnant with my second, and I couldn't do anything. It's awful. I couldn't smell her. I would lie in bed with her and I couldn't smell her breath or her hair because it would make me be sick. And I couldn't pick her up because I didn't have the energy. And when you're stuck listening to life go on without you, you do go really dark, because you just think, well, they don't need me. No one needs me. And I just, that was really hard. I think I had prenatal depression by the end. And I think the intensity of the beginning was definitely the hardest. Those days were the hardest. But the chronic nature of it, I just couldn't. I could get out of bed. I was well enough, and this was a hard thing, being well enough to get up. And I went to work because I had to. And I was a mum because I had to. But I was half a mum and I was half a person. And I was very lost within that. And I just wasn't the mum that I wanted to be. I wasn't the person that I wanted to be. I wasn't the friend, the wife. I couldn't be. But I had to keep going through the motions. I had to keep showing up as these things, but just a very, very bad version of them. And that was really tough too. And I think that's where the guilt that comes with all of it took a big toll on my mental health. One of the main reasons I wanted to talk about it was, you don't have a choice as a mother. You have to keep showing up for the baby that you're making, for the babies that you already have. And that's the really exhausting and really lonely part of HG. When I was pregnant with my first, I could go and lie in bed. I could go and lie in bed and feel really sorry for myself, and it was horrible and it was horrendous, but it was just me. And I just had to get through that on my own. But by the time I'm doing it when I've already got a baby, it's not just me anymore. You know, I've got to keep going for my other daughter, and yeah, not being able to do it in the way you want to is just heartbreaking.
Her second daughter, Xanthi, was born just before Christmas. Her arrival brought overwhelming joy and intense relief at making it through another HG pregnancy.
How did it affect, you know, other people close to you, do you think?
I'll cry again. I think when you're going through it, you're the pregnant person and you're the sick person. So you're the one that's visibly pregnant, you're the one that's sick and suffering, and visibly so. You know, you're the one in the hospital and you're the one going through it. And I think everybody has to have that approach when you're going through it, because that's how you all survive. And that was very much the case for us until we were getting to the end of the pregnancy. And I was really aware. I was really aware that I hadn't been the friend that I wanted to be to a lot of my friends this year. I was aware that I hadn't been the work employee colleague that I wanted to be, and that other people were needing to pick up my slack, so to speak. But within my family, that was agony. That was the thing that hurt me the most. I was not the wife or mother that I wanted to be. I couldn't be who I needed to be. That was very frustrating, and I don't think we realised the toll that it had taken until we went into hospital to give birth, and we cried on the way in. And my husband is not an emotional person. He is stoic and logical, and we've been together 12 years, and I've seen him cry a handful of times. I think we were just so relieved that it was done and we'd done it, and it did feel, I felt like I was really going through it, and I really felt in that moment it was like, no, we've been through this. So I think when we are aware of people in our lives who have HG, or we were asking ourselves, how can I be there for this person? You have to be there for that unit, you have to be there for that family, because they need so much. And yeah, I mean, my husband, both my husband and my daughter, I haven't got the words for gratitude.
You know how they say everybody's fighting a battle that you know nothing about? That is not the case for me. We'll know a lot about the battle that I'm currently fighting because I don't shut up about it.
Em documented her illness and shared it with her followers in solidarity with other sufferers and in the hope of raising awareness.
Did you always know you were going to document it?
No, not at all. I felt incredibly uncomfortable, for lack of a better word. I think in my first pregnancy, I was very cautious about sharing the bad side of pregnancy. And I think I was right to be, because to be pregnant is the biggest privilege, as far as I see it in the world. I never for a second wanted anybody to misinterpret my suffering for a lack of gratitude, because I was so grateful, and I am so grateful to have been pregnant both times.
HG might not be common, but struggling is. And since I'm struggling, I thought I might as well do it publicly.
With my second, I felt I genuinely had no choice but to share it. I couldn't have pretended. I couldn't have gone about like everything was normal, because it wasn't, and I wasn't okay, and I couldn't have done it.
I feel so lonely.
And those dark thoughts and that isolation, and I thought to myself, I can't let someone else be on their own with this. I can't do this on my own. We can't do this on our own. So the second time I needed the community, and I think a lot of people ended up needing what we found.
And what was the response like from people?
Some of the comments made to me at the beginning when I initially opened up about it were unforgivable. Told that bad actions have bad consequences. Told that I deserved it, that I should be getting on with it, that, I chose to get pregnant, so what did I expect? There was so much cruelty at the beginning, and I thought, oh my God, this is so indicative of how we treat pregnant women. I think I feel very curious about the 12-week, I feel very conflicted about the 12-week rule we have, where we say don't tell anyone you're pregnant until you're 12 weeks, in case something goes wrong. And I understand that, and I understand from a self-preservation perspective that women need to and want, and families need and want to do that. But I also think that HG or not, the first 12 weeks of any pregnancy are the hardest. And subliminally, that says to me that the society is saying to women, if you could just suffer in silence, we'd all be a little bit more comfortable. And I found myself incapable of suffering in silence, to be honest. So I felt compelled to share it, and the more I shared, the more I felt I had to share. And I think there was a point when I filmed a realistic day in the life, and it was one of the worst days in my life. It was horrendous. It was one of the illest days I've been. But I also heard on the back of that from an employer, and she's like a big dog. She sent me a message, and she said, because of your content, I've been able to be a better employer to one of our members of staff who has HG, and she's off at the moment. And I was so proud of that. And I thought, I've got to keep doing this, because I had a friend who lost her job while she was a freelancer, and she lost her job while she was in hospital the first time with her first baby, and she never heard from them again. And it's so cruel that we can do that, but it's so, the last thing you need when you're this ill is the like financial stress, work stress, but it's happening, you know, and we're seeing mothers cut out the workforce anyway, all the time. And with HG, obviously, you know, work is just not, and I'm lucky, you know, I've got a stupid job. I've got a job I can do from bed, you know, I'm the luckiest person in the world, but you know, you've got doctors and teachers and people up on their feet they can't work. And I really wanted to try and show anyone watching, whether it be a husband, a friend, a partner, an employer, critically, what it looks like and why they can't come in today and why you need to pay them anyway.
What needs to change? How can things be better?
I've heard it said that people don't want to medicalise pregnancies too much because it is the most natural thing in the world or whatever. And, you know, you hear a lot like, well, you're pregnant, you're not sick, which is true, unless you have hyperemesis, in which case you're pregnant and you're sick. And by the time Xanthi was born, I felt like I was recovering from a sickness rather than I was actually quite surprised I had a baby, because it was like, oh my God, this is what this was about. It's all very well to say like, well, we need to get women to the end of their pregnancies. It's like, you need to support women to the end of their pregnancies, whether it's hyperemesis or not. Maternal mental health is hugely under-supported, and of course it is. Like, of course, look at the world that we're telling women to have babies. It is nuts. And they need so much support. And you know, hyperemesis is the tip of the iceberg, but underneath that, there's women just crying out for help and for support and to feel seen. And yes, it's natural, and yes, it's the most beautiful thing in the world, but it can be so hard. And I think often, yeah, sometimes you need pills, but sometimes you just need a hug, and you need to be seen. And I feel very grateful that I have felt very seen, but I've spoken to a lot of women who haven't felt seen, and I imagine that toll is huge. After my first daughter was born, it was like the sun came out, and that's the only way I can describe it. It was like clouds parted, this beam of warmth just filled my life again. She was just sunshine. And I knew that that was coming for me again. And I held on to that with both hands. And it was genuinely the only thing I had. And that's why Xanthi is called Xanthi, because Xanthi means golden. And I knew that she would be sunshine, and she was. But it's that trust is everything. So if you're watching this and this is your first pregnancy, please have that trust.